Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Great to be back with you. Here we are Tuesday. Sorry about not having a video yesterday. I was just so tremendously tied up and everything. Anyway, we are still in our study comparing Romans chapters 5 through 8 with 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Paul is obviously dealing with resurrection in both passages. And what we're looking at is in the comparison between Romans 5 to 8 and 1 Corinthians 15, we are seeing that Paul's discussion of Adam's sin and death in Romans has nothing to do with biological bodies coming out of the dirt. Since Romans 5 to 8 is parallel with 1 Corinthians chapter 15, that means that if Romans 5 to 8 is not dealing with the raising of physical bodies out of the dirt, then that means 1 Corinthians 15 is not dealing with raising physical bodies out of the dirt. Now, I've shared an awful lot of information with you, and we want to look today at an absolutely incredible passage. And I want to tell you, this passage gives the commentators fits, because what it says is just contrary to the traditional views. Paul says in Romans chapter 8 and verse 10, if Christ is in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the spirit is life because of righteousness. Now, wait a minute, folks. If Christ is in you, the body is dead. And that means if and only if Christ would be in us, is the body dead. Well, now wait a minute. If the body here is physical body, then only if I have Christ in me will I die physical body. My physical body die. What? That makes no sense whatsoever. That's completely untenable. Aren't those outside of Christ the most ungodly reprobate? Isn't their physical body going to die? Oh, and by the way, if Christ is in you, the body is dead. Well, wait a minute. Didn't every human being from Adam onward, before Christ ever came, before Christ ever dwelt in anyone, didn't every one of those people die biologically? Of course they did. But Paul says, if and only if Christ is in you, the body is dead. And commentators have fits with this, and they say, well, if Christ is in you, the body will die eventually, but it will be made alive. Well, that's not what Paul says. That's eisegesis. That's reading into the text something that is simply not there. If Christ is in you, the body is dead. Now, folks, I got to tell you, if we're dealing with physical death here, then this is a humongous challenge to the traditional views of eschatology, resurrection, and by the way, also of soteriology. If Christ is in you, the body is dead, does it mean your physical body will die because Christ is in you? Because, again, what about those people outside of Christ in whom Christ is not dwelling, who die biologically? Are you going to take the position, oh, well, Christ is indwelling every single human being, and because Christ now dwells in every single human being dies physically? Wow, what a position. What body is Paul talking about? We have to understand that Paul's concept of body here in Romans 8:10 goes back to chapter 5 And we don't have time to develop that, but notice all the way back in chapter 7, verse 24, Paul said, O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death? Well, what body was he talking about? He was talking about the body of condemnation under Torah. You see, Paul thought of himself, as I've shared with you, Paul thought of himself, and of every man basically, as living under one of two masters, in one of two realms. He perceived himself, by the way, as the ancients did as a whole, of living in the realm of death, being in a body of death, or being in the realm of Christ in a body of life. Paul wanted to be delivered from the body, the realm, the sphere, but he calls it the body. And once again, he's not talking about biological body. Paul did not want to be free from his physical body. That was not the point. He wanted to be free from that realm and that body of death. And so he says in Romans chapter 8, verse 10, if Christ is in you, that body is dead because of sin. It is doomed to perish. Christ is the deliverance from that body. So he then says, but the Spirit of life because of righteousness. You see, if Christ is in us, one body dies. But another body, a body of righteousness and life, is, may I use the term, created. We leave the old man of sin behind. Romans chapter 6, 4 to 5, buried with Christ in baptism, in order that the old body might be destroyed, that the body of sin might be destroyed. So Paul here is setting forth a contrast in Romans chapter 8 that is absolutely not dealing with biological body. Living under Torah, a person was in a biological body, but they were in the body of death. They were in the realm of death. When they became a child of God, they began to put on the new man, the body of life, as Paul calls it right here, righteousness. It is absolutely imperative that we get inside Paul's head, step outside of our preconceived ideas of physical, biological bodies. If we hang on to that concept that Paul is talking about biological bodies, we're not going to understand Paul's doctrine of resurrection. Now, very, very quickly, consider that Paul says, if Christ is in you, the body is dead. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul urged his readers, as we have borne the image of the earthly. Well, what's the image of the earthly? Adam, law, sin, death. Let us, let me remind you, this is in the subjunctive mode in the Greek. Let us put on the image of the heavenly. Just like Paul is urging them in Romans 8 to put away the body of flesh, the body of sin, and to put on the body of Christ. That's what Paul's talking about in 1 Corinthians 15. But once again, in Romans 8, he's not talking about biological body when he says, if Christ is in you, the body is dead. Can't be talking about biological bodies. And we got more to drive that home that you don't want to miss. In the meantime, go to my website and order the book, The Last Enemy and the Triumph of Christ by Daniel Rogers. Fantastic little book, super easy to read and understand. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, and order the book. I'll guarantee you, you'll be glad you did. Hey, we'll see you on the flip side.